Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ann Livingston. I am a writer, storyteller, mentor, nomad, all of the things. And I was just thinking before I hit record, I'm like, man, I really like the background of this one. I'm staying in a resort for a few nights, and it's just a lot more, colorful than my apartment, which is still pretty minimal. So I don't want to say that I've been it's not that I've been avoiding making another video, but I've been avoiding making another video. I've had a lot of things actually happen in the last, well, it hasn't been a week since I recorded that video, but in the last week of really, I guess, embarking on my relationship with Jesus, which I still can't say it yet with a straight face. Over time, I will be able to. But there have been some interesting things that have happened that I wanted to really just document and share. And I actually had someone on my podcast, Uncensored, the other day, and she actually grew up in like a conservative Christian home, and she kind of broke out of a lot of those molds and is, very active in the new age. And, I fully believe that each person needs to have their own journey, right? Like, we're all on our own path. We're all on our own journey. At the end of the day, none of us know what happens when we die, And so I said this in my last video, and I'll say it again, like, I'm not sitting here claiming to have the answers. All I have is my own personal experience of life. And I have had I've had many different experiences because I have chosen over the years to look through different lenses in order to experience life in different ways. And so that's where I'm at right now. But it's been really interesting to just notice how different this feels for me. It's the most peaceful I think I've probably ever felt in my entire life. And I just realized I didn't finish my last sentence about that woman on the podcast. So she so we were sharing, like, we had similarities in how we grew up and kind of where things began for us, but then we also had differences. It was kind of like our paths, like, there were differences but similarities. They were the same but different. And then there was like this intersection, and then we kind of like separated again. Anyway, but when I was sharing with her about how I've been called to read the Bible and to develop and cultivate this relationship with Jesus, she thought it was really interesting. And she was like, you should blog about it. Like, you should document your journey. And I was like, I mean, it's kind of like all I do is live my life and document it. So I knew that there would be documentation of this. I knew that there would be some video documentation. I knew that there would be some writing documentation, whether it's through blogs or on my Patreon. But and then of course it'll go into book form down the road. But I also have been noticing a lot of resistance when it comes to sharing my journey, and a lot of emotions that have been coming up. Because it's one of those experiences where I know what I feel, I know what I'm experiencing, and I don't really have words for it. Like, I have stories, I have some examples of things that have happened, but I don't have words yet for like what it all means. I feel like at this point I'm just kind of like gathering information, and then once I gather enough information, I'll be like, oh, here's a conclusion I can probably draw from all this information. But what's been interesting for me is that like I said, I have this sense of just like peace and calmness that I've like never had before. Now, granted, I do believe that a huge piece of that came from my healing journey the last 4 years. It's not like I haven't had any personal and spiritual and emotional growth over the last 4 years. I've had a lot, but it's almost like because of the 4 years that I had of really deep internal work, that now shifting into and it's not really shifting into, I guess it's more like removal of all of these other things. It's just this, like, for lack of better terms, it's just like this clear path to Jesus. And what's interesting for me is that I know this energy. Like, I've experienced this before. I've experienced this, within the past 4 years, and that's really a story for another day. But this is an energy that I have been seeking out for the last 4 years. And I just thought that it was something else energetically. I didn't know that this is what it was. And so it's really interesting to just kind of be in it all the time. Like, what is this? What is this experience that I'm having right now? But what's really interesting to me is that all of my other cravings are just like gone. I'm someone who has struggled with lots of different cravings over the years, and I've healed a lot of addictions over the years. Like, I basically have stopped drinking. I think it's been almost a year since I've had a drink at all, but even before that, it was like I would have maybe 1 or 2 drinks a year. Before that, I was an alcoholic. And so I had already healed, my alcoholism. And I don't actually really like the label of alcoholic. I don't like labels at all, but I don't personally like the label of alcoholic. But if I had to put a label on it, that's the label I would give it. I was addicted to alcohol. I used alcohol as a way to numb and escape life, and so that one had already been healed. I had already healed my codependency. Those were like the top 2. But then there was also this food addiction where it wasn't so much that I was overeating. Like, more recently, it's not like I overeat, but food was just like always on my mind. I was constantly thinking about, what was I going to eat? When was I going to eat? As I was eating, I was thinking about, like, what will I eat at my next meal? It was just like food was always on my mind. It became almost like an obsession. There were moments where it's like, if I wasn't going to eat, then I would like go onto Pinterest and look at food, whether it was just like recipes or whatever. And I mean, I used to talk about like food porn, just like going onto Pinterest just to look at food porn. And it's that kind of addiction where it's just like, you just can't stop thinking about it. And that's like, it's like gone away. And that's been the weirdest part for me, because that's been my entire life. But it's like, I just feel nourished, and like food is there to nourish me instead of, of course it tastes good, but it's like, I feel like it's beginning to play a different role in my life. And so I haven't weighed myself in a long time. I just recently did, but before that I hadn't weighed myself in a long time. And I'm not focused on weight loss. I believe that weight loss is a byproduct of other things in your life. But I'm curious, because I can already tell, like, my pants are getting looser, and I'm like not even trying, So I have this feeling, this is just a prediction, but I have this feeling that the weight is going to begin to just fall off. And it's been like 4 years of stubborn, gradually gaining weight, not being able to really lose, trying all these things that worked before weren't really working. And I noticed in my life that the weight started to gain when I opened myself up to my intuitive gifts. And then it was like I gained the weight and then I couldn't lose it. And I don't have a lot of answers per se. I have a lot of predictions, but I don't have a lot of answers for exactly what it means. Because it's not like I'm not intuitive, right? It's not like I can't tap into my intuition, or that I can't tap into, but like what I'm starting to decipher, I guess, for lack of better terms, what I'm starting to at least try to decipher is, what is the difference for me? What is the difference between channeling and like tapping into the Holy Spirit, you know? And some people would probably say that there's not a difference, but I don't know. So I'm kind of exploring that a little bit. But then I had this interesting experience today where I was supposed to be on a podcast this morning for basically entrepreneurs who travel, which has been my life for years. And I always love talking about that part of my life and that part of my journey, because I traveled, when I was traveling full time, I traveled in such a unique way, you know? And I have a lot of wisdom when it comes to that, you know? And so I was really looking forward to being on this podcast and like sharing my story and, you know, talking to the host. And it was someone who actually had found me initially. And then shortly before the episode today, before our recording, she emailed me to tell me that it wasn't she didn't specifically say it wasn't a good fit, but it was something along the lines of how, like, she checked out my content, she should have done it earlier, and that it just like wasn't aligned or whatever. So I already pretty much knew what she was getting at without her saying it, but I was like, maybe I'm creating a story. Maybe I'm actually projecting my insecurities and my stories onto her, you know, so maybe I should just ask. So I did, you know, I was like, I'm confused because it feels like it's actually really in alignment, like literally everything that, like all the topics that are targeted for your audience are things I can talk about. And she responded back to me and said that her audience is, you know, her targeted audience is liberal, atheist, agnostic, and new age, and that my Christianity seems to play a big part in my entrepreneurship and my journey, which is funny to me because I'm like, this literally happened like a week ago. You know, before, I mean, not the well, and when it comes to like liberal and conservative, I'm like, I'm not liberal, but I'm also not conservative. Like, I have kind of bowed out of the whole two-party system. So it's one of those things where I found myself wanting to like defend and justify and explain. And I realized, I was like, what this tells me is that people don't really know me, you know, which is fine. Like, she just came into my life. So she doesn't know me, but I was reflecting on it because, you know, I experienced not that same scenario, but I experienced rejection and assumptions being made when I walked away from the Democratic Party. And I'm noticing that some of the same types of assumptions are beginning to come up around this label of Christian, even though at this point in time, I don't actually feel comfortable labeling myself as a Christian, because from what I understand, to be a Christian, you have to have some pretty high fucking standards for yourself. and I'm taking that seriously. Like, I'm choosing to take that seriously. I think that I can develop a relationship with Jesus, and still, you know, decide is, I'm going down the traditional Christian path as far as I'm choosing to learn the Bible. I'm choosing to read and learn the Bible, or learn about the Bible. I'm choosing to intentionally cultivate a relationship with Jesus. I am seeking out Christian churches. So, yeah, that path looks like the Christian path. That looks like it would fit into the Christian label. But I'm not one to remove myself from one group and immediately just like launch myself into another. I actually don't really like being part of groups. Like, I don't like groupthink. And so although I'm allowing myself to be involved in groups because there's value in community, I'm also being very intentional about it all, and so it's been an interesting experience. And so then tonight I had an emotional night and I cried a lot, and which I'm used to. Like, I'm used to feeling feelings and crying at this point. It's just like par for the course. But I was sitting with it because I was reflecting with a friend, or reflecting to a friend, I guess I should say. And I was just kind of sitting with, like, where is the sadness coming from? And I realized that this journey for me feels very sacred. It feels very personal, and it's not just like I feel like someone could look at this and be like, what's the big deal, Ann? You're just like deciding if you want to have a relationship with Jesus, like NBD, no big deal, right? But that's not my story. Like, my nomadic journey plays a part in all of this. My choosing to leave Chicago plays a part in all of this. My childhood plays a part in all of this. Like, there's a lot of depth to it for me. And so for me, it feels very personal. It feels very raw and vulnerable. And to share it with the world, it's part of what I do, right? But to share it with the world, I'm allowing something very sacred to be under attack. And so I've had to sit with, how much do I want to share? Where do I want to share? Who do I want to share it with? And we'll see where it goes. But I think it's like, I'm the type of person, I was chatting with a different friend earlier today, because she was asking me all kinds of questions, which, they're good questions, and I don't always have answers to every question. That's okay. I don't feel like I need to have answers to everything, but she's also a person where, if she asks me a question and I tell her, well, in this moment, this is what's coming up for me, or like, this is kind of what I've been pondering, she doesn't hold me to that. Like, if I change my mind the next day because new information comes in, it is what it is, And I think that we've lost a lot of that in our culture. Like, I think that we're almost afraid to explore different ideas because there's this fear of, I can't change my mind, right? I can't change my mind. I can't change my beliefs. I can't change those things. And I'm the type of person now where it's like, I like just like wondering things or thinking about things. Like, I'm not going to share what I've been thinking about because I'm not ready for these thoughts to be under attack. But, you know, in order to explore the Bible, you kind of have to be open to exploring Satan and hell and sin and what that means for you, you know? And those are really triggering topics for a lot of people. They're not really triggering for me, but they're triggering for a lot of people. And like the topic of homosexuality comes up, you know, and a lot of times I think people make assumptions about, if you choose to be a Christian, if you choose to follow the Bible, if you choose to believe in the Bible literally, therefore you believe these things, and therefore you're closed-minded, and therefore, you know, it's just like there's all these assumptions, and that's not true for me. Like, I believe it's healthy to question things and to allow yourself to just ask yourself, if I think this, and if I choose to believe this, and if that contradicts this other thing in my life, what does that mean? You know, it's just like playing around with that. And is there a way to believe this thing or to hold this as truth in my body while also holding this? And yes, they contradict, but is there a way for them to live simultaneously without contradiction? And like, that may not make sense without giving specific examples, and that's okay, but that's where I go. And so I choose to see things through many different lenses. And I've said this in different videos before. I know I talked about it in the narcissist video. I choose to see things through different lenses because when I see things through different lenses, it changes my experience of life. And it allows me to grow and to evolve. And it really allows me to connect with other people. You know, what a lot of people don't know about me, unless they've like known me for a very long time, is that I've worn many different hats. I've seen life through many different lenses. You know, I've had a lot of different experiences. And so when I choose a different path to explore it, it's because I'm genuinely curious about it, you know? And a lot of times when I get genuinely curious about something and I choose to go down a different path, I still kind of do it in my own way. But it expands. It expands so much of how I see the world, you know? And sometimes beliefs do change. But just because my beliefs have changed on certain things doesn't mean that all of a sudden my love and compassion for humanity has gone away. Like, if anything, that's expanded because I understand all the different lenses, you know? So again, I think that someone who may not know me could think potentially like, Now Anne is a conservative Christian, so she must be, I don't know, homophobic, racist, closed-minded, judgmental. Like, I'm probably one of the least judgmental people you'll meet. But again, because I've had so many experiences, I've looked through the lens of teacher. I've looked through the lens of teacher in a high poverty school. I've looked through the lens of teacher in a gifted and talented school. I've looked through the lens of nanny. I've looked through the lens of health and wellness coach, spiritual mindset coach, business coach, writer. I've looked through the lens of nomad. I've looked through the lens of a married woman. I've looked through the lens of a single woman. I've looked through the lens of a woman who's been abused. I've looked through the lens of a woman who dated another woman. I've had that experience. And it's not just like I've had these experiences to like check something off a list either, right? It's that I genuinely wanted to explore who I was through that lens. And so, I mean, years ago, I didn't have that level of awareness. But that's ultimately, I was like, this is a piece of myself that I want to explore to see how much of it is really there, like how much of it is really truly authentic. And some things, I'm glad I had the experience. I'm glad I had the experience. I'm glad I saw life through that lens. But it's not the most authentic version of who I am. And so that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. I'm choosing to see life through the lens of a woman who is cultivating a relationship with Jesus. And at this point in time, I can say that it's very powerful. There's still, there's a long ways to go in the fact that I feel like I don't really know how to communicate yet, even though I pray every morning and every night. I have very consistent, I can't really say dialogue because Jesus seems to be a little quiet. So I don't really hear a lot in return. But I do talk to him. I do talk to him on a regular basis. And honestly, like one of my biggest fears in this whole thing was like, oh my God, now people are going to see me as like a Bible thumping Jesus freak. And I'm like, well, guys, if that's who I become, then that's who I become. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm so much myself that even if I became a Bible thumping Jesus freak, I would like to imagine that I would still find humor in it all, So we shall see what happens. But that's the update, I've actually been rejected a lot. Like the podcast was one example. I have experienced a lot of rejection in the last few days, and it has not been easy. It has not been easy, but what becomes more and more apparent for me as I'm experiencing this is that what I want more than anything else is for it to just be okay for me to be myself. And I know that if I feel that way, I'm not the only one. I know that there are so many people out there who just want to know that it's okay to be themselves, or they just want to know that it's okay to change their mind, or that it's okay to have different experiences of life, or that it's okay to just be where you are on your journey. Like these are all natural pieces of the human experience. And I think that so often there's so much pressure to be at a certain point in your life, have achieved, X number of goals by a certain date, or, believe a certain thing, or whatever it is, And what I find is that the more that I just let everyone else kind of do their own thing, not because I don't care, and there are things that I'm very passionate about, especially when it comes to, um, you know, we don't solely live in a bubble, right? So like, yes, our experience of life does affect other people's experiences of life, and I do believe that we need to be mindful of those things. But for the most part, when we're not in a super heated period in our history, and like the normal day to day, right? Um, it's okay to just be where you are, and to just explore where you are. And because I feel like the more open you are to really fully exploring and following that path, I believe that you will get to wherever feels, balanced and right for you. And the truth is that, no one can know that for you. No one can know that for you. So, we all get to wherever we're supposed to be at some point in time. Um and it makes it a lot harder when we feel that it's not okay for us to be ourselves. So for whoever needs to hear this, it's okay. It's okay for you to be yourself 100%. And and if you're in the same spot in any capacity and you find yourself getting rejected or excluded for whatever, just that reminder of like, it's okay to be myself. It's okay to be myself. And yeah, that's it. That's my message for you guys. If you feel like connecting, I'll put all the information down below. And all right, talk to you guys later. Bye.